questions, and I'm going to give you the answers here on another edition of Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody. I'm Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jaguars podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen because it's your team every day. And a reminder that we are free on all platforms. Please make sure you find us, like, and subscribe on all platforms wherever you get your podcast and on our YouTube page. I got some training camp information. You see, it's important. It's like your professor. Whenever I get my pen, that means I've dotted some stuff down that I want to run by you. And I'm going to do that here today on Locked On Jaguars. To me, these are my biggest questions heading into training camp 2022. Of course, the Jaguars are very, very close. The countdown has begun. Today is the 13th. Training camp starts on the 24th. So that means these guys are going to be getting it in here pretty soon. Of course, they get started too because they're playing in the Hall of Fame game against the Raiders. Big Bo is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, so I'm sure that there will be a whole slew of teal and black folks headed up to Canton. Finally have a reason to go up there. Overdue. We got two other reasons that need to be settled in the near future with Fred Taylor and Jimmy Smith. So we'll see at some point if we can get those guys in the Hall of Fame where they rightfully deserve to be. But now we got a whole new year coming into training camp, and I have the three biggest questions that I'm about to tell you what they all are. We're not going to make you wait for segment 2 and 3. We're going to give them to you right now. The three biggest questions I have going into training camp as I use this pen to scratch my head the way Dr. Briscoe used to do it at Andrew Jackson Middle School up in Suitland, Maryland. Here it is right here. The three biggest questions headed into camp. One, and this is my order. It may not be your order, and I understand everyone has a different way of viewing things and things that they want to see in training camp. You'll notice that the things that I'm talking about are more big picture issues because I think the little things about who's going to do this and who's going to do that, I think that's irrelevant until these other things are settled. One, Doug Pederson's approach with players, especially Trevor Lawrence. That's number one. And this is what we'll talk about in segment 1. Segment 2, how quickly will the defensive players grasp and understand Mike Caldwell's defense? That's something that's extremely important, especially since we've been talking about the athleticism. We'll go through that in segment 2, of course. And leaders must emerge on both sides of the ball. That is a huge, huge thing that goes overlooked by a lot of people because every locker room needs leadership, and it comes with trust, and it also comes with the belief in the guys who are doing all the talking. So therefore, those are the things we're going to run through today here on Locked On Jaguars. We are glad to have you again. Reminder, this is the first show this week, but it's the first of 3 straight shows. So what we're doing is we're adjusting you back to the everyday, your team every day. So starting on Monday, so we'll go today, Thursday, and Friday, and starting on Monday, you won't get those breaks that you were getting while it was a little bit of downtime. On Monday, you'll get throughout the whole season, just like we used to do, you'll get a podcast every single day because I love talking ball with you guys, man, and love reaching out to you and letting you know. It's just something. You just have to wait until some things happen, right? So we've had all these mini camps. We've had all of the rookie get-togethers. We've had all the OTAs. We've been on the field. We saw the guys. We met the coaches. And one of the questions, in fact, it's the only question I asked Doug Pederson live in the press room. I asked Doug Pederson, based on his comments when he spoke about how this team basically, and I'm going to paraphrase this, I don't like quoting because sometimes you get quoting wrong. This team has basically, they've been through a lot because of what they've gone through with Urban Meyer. These particular guys went through it last year with Urban Meyer. Most of them did. But for the fans, it's been even longer than that. For the fans and a lot of those players in the locker room, this wasn't just about Urban Meyer. This is a permeating thing here of losing that after 2017, and yeah, I'm going to include this stuff. 2017 was a little bit of a break from the norm. The 2014, 13 and 14 teams are probably the two worst teams I've ever seen on a football field, even though the 2020 team set the record for the least amount of games won. This is bigger than just last year. Last year was just the ultimate blow it up tipping point of how bad things have been in Jacksonville. And I know I'm speaking to the choir when I'm talking to the fans. You guys have suffered. If it wasn't for that little 2017 break, I don't know if you guys would have made it or not, man. And when I say you guys, I'm talking about me too. So don't think that I'm speaking at you or I'm talking with you here. The 2017 break was, it's almost like the football guys gave us just a little bit of a reprieve. And it's like, I'm going to give you this because hold your beer now. You got a storm coming. And the mess last year was worse because we actually thought, or some of us did, we thought that it was going to be the actual turnaround when it actually was not the turnaround that we all thought it was going to be. So while we can focus on the fact that those guys lost trust last year in the coaching staff and it was a hot mess, it's actually been going on a long, long time. What made last year different to me was you finally got a generational quarterback, and that's where everyone thought things would change. So with Trevor Lawrence and with how difficult it is for you to get a guy like that in your organization, the screw-ups are magnified. And last year's screw-up was magnified, but it didn't break them. However, Doug Pederson did make a point to say he had to approach and handle them a certain way. I asked him this question. At what point do you push? Because every coach at some point gets angry. Every coach has to push. Every coach has to use discipline as a tool that allows the team to improve and get better. So at what point do you balance having to walk slow and having to be careful with going at some guys' necks and putting that pressure on them, because pressure bursts pipes. And then what you want to do is you're manufacturing a storm that's gonna somehow simulate to a smaller degree the storm that'll come when they get on the football field and they face adversity. So how do you push and how do you see how they react? So that question, and his answer was very good. He said it comes with trust, and as you move forward, you start pushing and you start doing more. So the legitimacy of the question was real because the way he answered it was exactly real. So my point about him, this first as training camp starts is what's his approach going to be, and when does that push start happening? And it's not as if we're looking for drama. That's not what it is. But it's a natural part of coaching to get on guys when they do something wrong, to hold guys accountable, especially when you're trying to take a roster from 90 down to 53 and you need guys to be able to step up, okay? So I want to watch that. I want to watch the way he speaks on days that Trevor doesn't play well or practice well, or, when they're in their 7-on-7 or they're doing their goal line and he throws interceptions. I want to see what his reaction is, and then I want to see what Trevor's reaction is to Doug's reaction. And I think that's going to talk a lot about what has to happen with those two, where they have to be an extension of themselves and they have to become one. So that's one of the storylines I'm looking at. I know it's going to come across like this. Wiggs going to training camp to see and wait for Trevor to screw up and wait and see if Doug yells at him. And if Doug doesn't yell at him, he's going to do a podcast saying Doug's being soft. That is absolutely not what. If Doug doesn't yell at him, then that tells you the answer about the approach and the level of some things going on that we don't know about behind the scenes, where some things that they've already talked about and Doug's decided this is the way that he's going to handle it. Trevor Lawrence said he doesn't like getting yelled at. So I assume that that's probably what's going to happen. But I do want to hear the answers as to when, and it could be as much as this. He'll be fine. Trevor will be fine. Everything's going to go well. We're good. We just walking and learning through the process. And I buy into that because I've told you guys, I used to see Jalen Ramsey, who's the best player on the field, lose reps. You guys wouldn't hear it. Most fans wouldn't hear it. But if you're standing on the sideline, you'll hear Jalen as soon as Allen Robinson or DJ Chark caught a pass, Jalen go, good rep. He go, missed it. Good rep, man. Good rep. Guys getting better on the football field and not having things go their way isn't the end all that the fans sometimes make it out to be, and sometimes media makes it out to be. It clicks. It's like, oh, look what happened to him. Oh, and then everybody wants to stop. That's not the way this works. The way this works is, I've given the analogy before, Michael Jackson. When I grew up, they were doing all these crazy routines. He never screwed up on the big stage, but I guarantee you in practice, he screwed up an awful lot. And it's just that in football, sometimes we get a chance to see practice. So we'll discuss this here more in depth in just a second as I get rid of this phone real quick. We're going to talk about the second thing that's on us as a big question. It is, how quickly will the defensive players grasp and understand Mike Caldwell's defense? This one I think is going to take a little longer than people want to imagine that it might. And that's not Debbie Downer. That does not sound as good as some people would like it to sound, but it's not as much of a bad news thing as people sound either. I just don't think that they're going to be quite as ahead, or I don't think they're going to be quite on top of it as people think. And I'll explain why that might be a good thing. And I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars, after I tell you guys about our friends over at Dave. Now, listen, it's been a while for me because I've kind of grown up and done pretty good for myself. But I remember days when I had 3 kids, and then I got married. I had 5 kids in daycare, and things got tough sometimes. So, we can all level together. We've all been in a situation at some point in our lives when we were a little tight on cash. Maybe you could only afford to put a few gallons of gas in your tank, or yet another, you got another save the date and are wondering how you're going to afford a gift. There's Dave. And that's where Dave can help. If you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be easy and really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. Now Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you really, really need it. Hindsight is 20/20, and you can't change the past, but what you could do is get a little help for your future self. Maybe you'd like to borrow a little cash. Now you can with Dave. Dave is a banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. Lose the anxiety, man, and the guilt. Just don't worry about it. You're going to be able to take care of yourself. Here's what you have to do. You have to download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's Dave, D-A-V-E. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. And your future, you will thank you as you should. And you'll be fine, man. Just get that Dave app right now, D-A-V-E. Download it and start getting your benefits. All right, man. So we thank you for making us your first lesson here, your first listen and your lesson here on Locked On Jaguars. I am your host, Tony Wiggins, and we're talking about the 3 biggest questions headed into training camp. The first one I went over, obviously, is Doug Pederson's approach with the players, especially Trevor Lawrence. This is one thing about overcoming, is not being able to ever learn how to win. You have to change the belief and the mindset of the players in the organizations, and you have to make them believe and make them understand that you can. You can. There's nothing that's stopping you. I said it before. There's nothing in the water. There's nothing in the air that is breathed here in Jacksonville. There's nothing in the teal uniforms that stops you from winning games. The next thing we're going to discuss is the other new coach on defense, and that's Mike Caldwell, who came in from Tampa. Mike Caldwell, how quickly defensive players grasp and understand what Mike Caldwell wants to do. A lot of times in training camp, the defense is ahead of the offense. I got a strange feeling it's going to be the other way around this year. And the reason why is because they've done so much insulating with Trevor Lawrence. They have so many people and so many eyes on the offensive side of the ball. And quite frankly, they have guys that they brought in. They do have a lot of guys that they brought in, but those guys are brought in to do specific things, whether it be running, catching, running routes. Those guys have been doing that forever. You always notice that skilled position players on offense adjust very quickly to the National Football League. They do. So when they brought in a lot of veterans and did not use a lot of draft picks on skilled position players on offense, that told me that they were looking for immediate payoff and immediate dividends from those guys being able to understand the NFL and understand the flow of the game. Now, Trevor Lawrence is the most important piece, but he's also, along with Travis Etienne, the youngest piece. So your most important piece is your youngest piece. You surround him with veterans, guys that have played, have been professional pass catchers and route runners, as well as Brandon Scherff on the offensive line. And then you maintain somewhat of a modicum of continuity by re-signing Cam Robinson and making sure that you worked a lot with Juwan Taylor and Walker Little, and you kept the pieces in place up front. Therefore, I don't think there's going to be a lot of things that those guys are going to have to really, really adjust to. I think they're going to be quicker. I think they're going to be faster, and I think it's going to snap quicker for them. Whereas with the defense, where you have Fadu Kazi on the defensive line, Oluwakan at linebacker, you have two brand new additions right in the middle of your defense, right? And then you go out, of course, and get Travon Walker at at edge rusher with the number 1 overall pick. You bring in Devin Lloyd, you bring in Chad Muma, you get Darius Williams at corner, and now you're changing the scheme as well. So I think there are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of responsibility that has to happen before guys really grasp every single thing that they're supposed to do. You have some guys coming back from injury. You got guys that didn't play very much. Andre Cisco didn't play very much last year, and he's going to be counted on this year. I think he's in tip-top shape. He looks fast, and he looks great, by the way. But there's just so much that needs to be learned. And I'm not saying that Mike Caldwell runs some sort of scheme that's really, really complex. But what I'm saying is the more pieces that you add, and they come from all different sorts of places, and they're young. Some of them are young, some of them are older. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but that doesn't mean that they're going to suffer. So that's the good news. It does not mean that they're going to suffer. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think in training camp, and I think for most of the preseason and early in the year, and this is going to be music to your ear, they're going to have to score 30 points a game at least before this defense really buckles down and understands and gets to the point where they really, really get it. I recall a game that Tampa played early in the year against Dallas. They were very opportunistic offensively, and they got a lot of turnovers. This was against Tampa. I think it was the year that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl. And it was against Dallas. And in fact, it was the year they won the Super Bowl. Dallas went up and down the field on them. If Dallas would have got out of their own way and stopped making mistakes, Tampa would have struggled. It was early in the season, but as the year went on, you saw late in the year, Tampa held Kansas City to 9 points in the Super Bowl. So now we understand the point that I'm trying to make is early on, you might have to outscore your opponent, and that means that Trevor Lawrence is going to get a chance to showcase his new weapons. It doesn't mean that I think they can't do it. I think they can, and that's the point. The point is Doug Pederson has been the kind of coach. Remember, when they won the Super Bowl, they gave up over 30 some odd points to the Patriots. They just scored 42 or something, 43 points. I think Doug Pederson will adjust and adapt and do what he has to do until the defense catches up with offense. So I'm going to look and see if I'm right. If the offense, because they have a larger veteran preference with their new additions, if they are actually out of the gate quicker and faster than the defense, and how we get that to play together as a team. Leaders must emerge on both sides of the ball. I'll tell you in just a second who I think those leaders are as we continue with the third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man, rolling through our third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars as we discuss the biggest questions heading into training camp. I chose 3. First, Doug Pederson's approach with the players, especially Trevor Lawrence, after having to come in and maybe baby him up a little bit to get over all the shock and awe and drama that they've suffered here last year in particular, but really for most Jaguar fans, it was way before that. How quickly the defensive players grasp and understand Mike Caldwell's defense, and if they don't grasp it, why it won't be as negative as some of us might believe. Leaders must emerge on both sides of the ball. Who are the leaders? Leaders to me are guys that more closely resemble the message and the messaging that comes from the coaching staff. Leadership is the guys that when they walk, other people follow. You don't demand it, you command it. Sometimes leadership, and you notice it's given based on the responsibility or based on the position you play or how much money you make. Other times leadership is based on what you do on the field, how you conduct your business, how you overcome adversity, how you handle situations. Sometimes it's a combination of all of that, and that's when you get lucky. I think Trevor Lawrence, I think they've hit the lottery in him with Trevor Lawrence, not only from a talent perspective, but also from a leadership perspective. And we saw that firsthand last year when he was unceremoniously paraded in front of the microphone every single time something happened and wasn't really able to just do quarterback stuff. I think that those things go away, but the lasting impression of that is that he actually did a very good job at being an overly grown ass man when he probably shouldn't have been put in that situation. The other thing is, I think his teammates love him to death. And then you're not hearing rumors about him out here finagling with his mom's best friend and all of that kind of stuff. That's a whole thing for another story. Shout out to Zach Wilson. But I just think stuff like that is funny. But you don't have those types of distractions, and you don't have those types of things that people are focusing on. People are just focusing on football. They're focusing on how his interaction has been with his teammates and his coaching staff and the things that he's doing in the community. Shout out to him also with one of his sponsors there, financing and paying for two of the Little League Pop Warner teams here in the area, covering all of the expenses, operating expenses, making sure that those guys can have some success over the next couple of years. But that just goes back into the things that we've discussed. Brandon Scherf, I think he's a leader. First of all, I heard he's a beast in that strength and conditioning locker room and that part of the team activity. So that goes a long way. And then he was voted like the third best interior lineman in the league by some execs. So I do think the young guys will look to him as a guy who knows how to prepare, knows how to work, and knows how to do the things before you get on the field that allow you to have success on the field. Still need to see who's going to be that leader at the wide receiver position. I think it's Marvin Jones. And the reason why I think it's Marvin Jones is because he was one of the people that stood up last year. And I think that stuff goes a long way with the players in the locker room. He stood up to a tyrant last year in front of everybody. And he's really, really, really a truly professional football player. That is what you get when you go out in free agency and you get a guy who's just going to keep his head down and work, but then he's going to stand up when he needs to. I think Marvin Jones definitely fits that. Defensively, Tyson Campbell is like a really good player in the secondary, but Tyson's he's kind of reserved and just kind of does his job. So he's a guy that I think will actually lead by example. I look for Andre Cisco, who's been very vocal, out in the forefront. He's doing interviews. He's working out with people. I think he's going to be the quarterback of the back end of the defense, and I think it's going to resonate with players because from the limited interaction that you do see with Andre Cisco with everyone else, he sort of stands out to me as that alpha dog. And sometimes you need to, and there's different types of alpha dogs. He stands out as the approachable alpha dog, not the alpha dog that you don't know what to say to him every single day. Shout out to Jalen Ramsey. But the thing is, that's how he sort of presents himself, and that's how he sort of carries himself. And it's starting to really, really show and resonate with just the gait, the way he walked around the practice field, the way, you saw the coaches interacting to him, the way the players responded to him. I do think that's what it is. I think you'll have multiple leaders at linebacker with Devin Lloyd as well as Foy Oluwakan, who is expected to really blossom here after leading the league in tackles last year. And Devin Lloyd, because he came here and the day after he got to Jacksonville, he went to work with my boy, Coach Smitty. He went to work with Coach Smith, where a lot of the other Jaguar players have been working, including Josh Allen. So he came in, put his head down. He grasped and has really engaged with people, and basically he's accepted it. He's accepted and embraced. That's the word I'm looking for. He embraced the role as a rookie, but a guy who has to get here and probably wear that dot on his helmet and say, no, I'm going to do more than just be a rookie. I'm here to change the organization, and you've seen that. Quiet, but not quiet in his movements and the way that he approaches Travon Walker. I think Travon Walker also, along with Josh Allen, this is where I think they'll come in and be two guys leading together. I think those edge guys will have a lot of attitude. And I think at some point you're going to get to the point where they're going to be recognized as a duo, like a lot of the old duos from the Pittsburgh guys with with Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green and all of those guys, when you saw that there were two people and they were sort of working in conjunction with each other and they had the cohesion. I think that's what you're going to get. I think we need to come up with a name for them, because I think both Josh Allen and Travon Walker, because they're the type of leaders that lead without being the boss, whereas they can be a duo, and they sort of have the same personality too, and some of the same characteristics and traits. But if I have to say that there's one leader on that defense, I think it'll come from Foy Oluwakan, because he's going to be probably the most vocal person. He's going to put everybody in the spaces and the spots where they need to. But in any event, we need to see the leadership. And if there's going to be special teams leadership, I think it comes from Jamal Agnew. I really do. I think he earned the respect of the team last year, and I don't expect that to change much this year. So, for the coin toss, Trevor, Sheriff, probably Josh Allen, Cisco, Jamal Agnew, Oluwakan. I wouldn't be surprised if that's 6 guys I think I named. I wouldn't be surprised if not all 6, those are amongst the group of people or players that you see going out for the coin toss. Maybe not the quarterback, because I think sometimes that doesn't happen because the quarterback's over there getting himself mentally together, practicing snaps, talking to the coach. But for a certain measure, I think those are the guys you'll see that will step forward and be the guys that everyone in camp decides to follow. You can follow me here on Locked On Jaguars every single day, because it's your team every day. I like saying that now because it's back to being actually true, where you can find us. You can also find me on the Locked On NFL podcast every Wednesday with James Rapine, and then you can check that out Monday through Friday with everyone else on the Locked On NFL podcast. So many great hosts from around the Locked On Podcast Network. I love that podcast because it gives us a chance to actually get outside of the box a little bit and talk about things around the league, because most of us host shows in one city. It gives us a chance to really spread our knowledge and to really interact with fans from every team around the league with the hottest stories of the day. So make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to the Locked On NFL podcast as well. And it is also on YouTube. Your team every day here. The 3 biggest questions heading into training camp. What are your 3 biggest questions? Hit me up on Twitter at Shop Talking Wig and let me know. Other than that, you guys, I will see you back here again tomorrow with another podcast here on the Locked On Jaguars show. I am Tony Wiggins, and I thank you for joining me, and make sure you do what we always say.